If a husband and wife wish to work for the same company in the UAE, they can absolutely do so. There is no law in the UAE that prohibits married couples from working in the same company. This is so even if the wife, for example, is on the husband's residence visa. To do so legally, however, the wife will need to have an employment agreement from the company, and the company will have to ensure that that employment agreement is properly registered with the relevant authorities. It is illegal for companies to hold passports of their employees. This is because the passport is a property of the government which issues it. Only limited government authorities such as the police, immigration, or courts have the authority to hold the passports. Therefore, all private entities and semi-government entities who hold passports of their employees are doing so against the law. If your passport is being held by your employer against your will, this is against the law. In such cases, you should file a request with the court for an expedited order through the typing center. The court then issues the order within 2 days. With this order, you then approach the police, who will contact your employer and demand the return of your passport immediately. Working hours during Ramadan in the UAE are reduced by 2 hours per day. This is in accordance with Article 65 of the UAE labor law. Importantly, the reduction of hours applies to all employees irrespective of whether they're working from an office or from home. Promotion of employees in the UAE is not an obligation mandated by the UAE labor law. Similarly, there is no law requiring companies to increase salaries of the employees either in line with a promotion or a term of service. On the other hand, if promotion or salary raise is expressly stated in the employment contract and the employee meets corresponding obligations, then the company does have a contractual obligation to promote that employee or raise his or her salary. And in the event the company fails to do so, it is considered as a breach of contract. In such cases, the employee can either file a complaint with the relevant judicial authority and/or resign and claim arbitrary dismissal compensation. If your employer in the UAE has reduced your salary, for example, by 30%, and you continue working on that reduced salary for, let's say, 10 months and on, the court may deem that to be as an implicit acceptance of your new compensation. In other words, it is not necessary to always agree to a reduced compensation or any other amendments in the terms of your employment in writing. It can also be done by practice. So for example, if you have been working for the company on 30% less of a salary than before for 10 months, the court will deem that as you have impliedly accepted the new terms of your employment, and they will deem that to be your current salary. Therefore, at the end of your employment contract, you will not be able to look back and claim compensation for the remainder of the salary. Is cost cutting considered a valid reason for termination of employment? The answer is no. For termination to be valid, it must be attributable to the employee and not the company. Therefore, being terminated on the grounds of company's cost cutting may entitle the employee to arbitrary dismissal compensation in the amount of up to 3 months of total salary. If an employee tests positive for COVID-19 during probation, it is considered to be as any other type of illness under the UAE law. Under that law, and Article 83 in particular, employees under probation are not entitled to paid sick leave compensation during their probation. Therefore, sick days during probation, including COVID-19, are considered as unpaid days off. Also, if the company chooses to terminate an employee who is positive with COVID-19 during probation, it can do so without notice and without any additional compensation, as is the case with any other type of termination during probation under the UAE labor law. What do you do when you're terminated by your employer without notice? Under the UAE labor law, you're entitled to a minimum of compensation for 1 month, unless your contract provides for a longer notice period. Additionally, if you were terminated with no good reason, you are also entitled to what's called the arbitrary dismissal, which can be up to 3 months of full salary. This is obviously in addition to your unpaid salary, untaken leave, and end of service. Unauthorized public gatherings, protests, and demonstrations are illegal in the UAE. This is in accordance with the UAE Penal Code, and in particular, Article 197(1). Specifically, the law penalizes anyone who participates in a public gathering in order to prevent or obstruct the implementation of the UAE laws and which endanger public security and peace. The punishment can include imprisonment and a fine of not less than 200,000 dirhams. Moreover, Article 197(2) penalizes anyone who uses technology or any other methods to instigate acts which compromise the UAE's security and public safety. The punishment is temporary imprisonment.